When do you see yourself as Scottish and when do you see yourself as British?
I feel Scottish, born in Scotland, at school in Scotland, university in Scotland, my children born in Scotland. I feel very Scottish, and it's seen, supporting Scotland at football. I've been at all the World Cup matches I could ever get to where Scotland's played abroad. I've been at Murrayfield to watch Scotland at rugby, tennis, Andy Murray, Chris Hoy. Very proud of all these people. So I feel Scottish by background, by birth, by living in Scotland now. But at the same time, I think most people in Scotland like the idea of being part of Britain because it's an inclusive idea. You can be Scottish and British. I can be a Fifer, which is where I come from in Scotland, Scottish, British and European.
But then what would you say to people who are frightened about voting no because they see that as being unpatriotic, as maybe being less Scottish than they should be? Well,
that would be a big mistake if they were persuaded that this was an issue of Scotland versus Britain. And I think the nationalists want people to think it's Scotland versus Britain or Scotland versus England. And I think sometimes the government itself has fallen into this trap.
Maybe Scottish people don't like to be lectured by Westminster politicians.
Exactly. That's been a problem, You see, David Cameron probably thought he was doing the right thing. He said, go up to Scotland, make the case for the Union. And then people came up to Scotland and said, Britain says no to Scotland having its share in the British currency. Or Britain says your defence jobs are going to go if Scotland goes independent. Or Britain says you're going to be bankrupt. And it looked like it was Britain versus Scotland. Now, it was all done for the right reasons or the right motives, but it looked like Britain versus Scotland. That's not the issue. This issue is Scottish people. Two visions of Scotland's future. One is what I call a patriotic vision. That's the one I support. We have our Parliament, a strong sense of nationhood, our own institutions, more powers for the Parliament, which I've been supporting and should be guaranteed by the time of the referendum in September. But we don't break every link with Britain. Or the other one, which says every link is broken. Because let's be clear, when I talk about breaking the link on pensions, on healthcare funding, on the BBC, on the armed forces, these are actually things that people don't really want to do.
Who there is standing shoulder to shoulder with you from industry, from showbiz, from sport? Who is there?
Well, Alistair Darling's leader of the campaign, and he's doing a very good job. I'm about to do a meeting in the next few days with Rory Bremner. Just as one example.
And he could be lots of people, couldn't he?
He could be lots of people. He'll certainly, doing a meeting with me, he'll be taking the mickey out of me and satirising me. But Rory Bremner, Richard Wilson, who's a great Scot, well known as an actor. I don't know how he's going to put it, that we can't do something. And many people who are famous are supporting this. But this is not a campaign about celebrities. People actually don't really want to hear from celebrities.
But surely they want to hear from captains of industry, do they not?
But they are hearing from captains of industry. In my constituency and just next door to it, Rosyth Dockyard, building the aircraft carriers. They're about to be, the first one's going to be launched by the Queen in the next few weeks. A huge contract that has come to Scotland because we're part of the UK Navy. There are 600,000 jobs in Scotland, 400,000 of them dependent on British companies, that is companies based in mainly England, employing people in Scotland. And then there's 200,000 jobs or more where Scottish companies export, whiskey, financial services, the rest, to England, to Wales and to Northern Ireland. And these are 600,000 jobs that are directly dependent on our membership of the United Kingdom. So you will not be short of business leaders now saying that they are worried about the consequences. And the idea that oil is a solution to our problems is simply fantasy. While the oil revenues help, they cannot solve the problems, and they can pay for only a third of the pensions. And we should not be led into this belief that somehow the day after independence everything is going to be wonderful, when there are quite painful decisions that have got to be made about the use of resources.
You see, that's very, very worrying. I mean, if you've got those figures and you believe those figures, and you obviously do.
They're absolutely true. And,
but if they're absolutely true, that means the SNP or the Yes campaign or somebody, Alex Salmond, is telling porky pies then.
Well, I don't believe we're getting the full picture about what the truth about the consequences of independence are.
Are you going to win this vote? Are you convinced you're going to win this vote? Or do you think this will be really close?
Well, I'm a very proud Scot, as you know, just as you're a proud citizen of Belfast. I'm very proud, and I want to put the case, because it's a Scottish vision of Scotland's future. This, as a Scot, is what I, as a patriotic and proud Scot, believe in. I believe we've got our strong sense of national identity, and that will never leave us. I believe we've got strong Scottish institutions. We've had our own religion, our law, our education. Yes, because we will put the Scottish argument, a Scottish vision for Scotland's future. And I think that is what people want to hear.
Say you lose. What happens then? Would you come back and fight on home soil? Would you seek public office in home soil? Or would you, a lot of people may fight and flight. What's your vision?
Well, of course, you would accept the decision of the Scottish people, but I never get into hypothetical situations, and I don't look beyond September. All my efforts in the next few weeks, and it's only 3 months to go. It's very, very short, and we've got the Commonwealth Games, we've got the commemoration of the First World War, we've got the World Cup that I'm watching.
If you're making the case for the Union, come England against Italy next Saturday night. Will the majority... No, that's a stupid question. I can't ask you that. Will you be cheering on England?
Well,
what are Scottish people going to do? What percentage of Scottish people will be cheering on England in the World Cup?
It'll be a relatively low percentage, because I think they've done a poll on that, and it's relatively low. I've never taken the view that if Scotland is not playing, that we should sort of come out against England. But some people in Scotland do. But that's, it's part of the rivalry. And a lot of people, we lived our lives through sport, through our support. You're Manchester United. Yeah. I mean, you live your lives and it sort of enhances your life, but sometimes it takes over your lives and people get too excited.
Yes.
And sport has probably borne a huge burden of Scotland's sense of national identity.
Say you're down at Wimbledon then, Andy Murray's playing. Do you wish you had have pulled out the Saltaire and waved it behind his head and said, he's our boy?
That was a terrible mistake. And, take politics out of this. I personally felt very embarrassed. And the reason I felt embarrassed was it made Scotland look small. We're not a country, in the end, that goes for these gestures. We're not a country that, in the end, wants to dwell on grievances or gripes, on scoring a cheap point against England or against Britain. And I think that was a very bad mistake. Just as, by the way, last week, when the Scottish office in the UK government put out that statement that Scotland will be 1,400 better off without independence, and they gave the example of fish and chips that you could buy or holidays in Torremolinos, I thought that was patronising. So people can make mistakes, and I think Mr Salmon ought to recognise that made Scotland, because these pictures were shown all over the world, and I would never have done that, and I think it made Scotland seem small, when I actually think Scotland should be big.
I'm sure as Prime Minister you were very proud to be Scottish, but you're also very proud to be British as well.
Well, I was very proud to represent Britain, and there's no 4 nations in the world have come together in exactly the way we have, where we share our resources, so that if you've got problems in Northern Ireland, we help you out. If we've got problems because of unemployment in one part of Scotland, the whole of the country helps you out. If something's going wrong with tin mines in Cornwall, we help them out. So I'm proud of Britain as a multinational country with an inclusive idea of what it means to be British. And that means people can be Muslim and British. People can feel that they are part of a community.
The Yes people would say, we're a more compassionate nature. We're being ruled by Westminster. We are better off self-determining.
I've looked at the SNP policies, and they claim that Scotland will be more equal, a fairer, a more socially just society. Actually, when you look at the policies, they're so keen to appease all sorts of different people that they end up making Scotland a more unequal country. So this idea that if you want social justice, you've got to go for independence, look at the policies, look at the small print, and actually you'll find that Scotland under the SNP would be a more unequal country, and I certainly don't want to see that happening.
No, as a word, is no a difficult word. Is a no. Are you used to saying no? Are you good at saying no? You obviously want everyone to say no.
To my children, and when I was at the Treasury, to all my colleagues, having to tell them they couldn't have money. But there's another way of looking at this word no. K-N-O-W, with no, N-O in the middle. Know the best future for Scotland, and that's probably the reason why you should vote NO. You're not making this vote and this decision on whether Scotland's a nation. We already are a nation. You don't need a referendum to decide that.
Well, the Kirkcaldy Colossus is now in action. He has been unleashed.
I wouldn't put it that way.
You're the big hitter, and you're up there.
I'm just one of the people who are trying to help. And
is there anything that any message, any final words that you would like Alex Salmond to chew on as he's watching this interview this morning?
I think Scotland can be big in the world without being a separate state. And I think you can feel strongly Scottish and patriotic, but know at the end of the day that it doesn't actually make sense to split the army, and it doesn't make sense to have separate currencies, and it doesn't make sense to have a separate funding of your health service or separate pensions. So there are many things that the Scottish National Party want to recognise the importance of Scotland that are common to those people who are calling for a no vote. But in the end, do we really want, and I think Mr Salmond had to answer the question himself when he decided he wanted to be part of the British currency, but not to have any say over it, which is ridiculous. If you want to be part of the currency, you want some say over it, and he's surrendered having any say over it. And I think he realises that some of his propositions don't really make sense.
Gordon Brown, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.